Hello, we meet again. Happy Thursday. Today I'm going to chat to you about this kind of little known portion of the advanced level sommelier exam, which is called the wine list correction. So for most of you who have actually seen the Somm documentary, or some of you who are in the process of taking your sommelier examination, trying to pass the advanced level, you might all know that this test is not easy, and there are three parts: is theory, tasting, and service. But not many people actually know that during the theory portion, in the beginning of the theory portion, there is what we call a wine list correction. And what that is you will get about 5 minutes, or at least when I went 10 years ago, it's been 10 years, it has. Right before the official theory exam starts, there is a 1-page mock wine list. And your goal is in that 5 minutes to find as many correction or as many error on that list as possible. And today's topic was asked by, I believe, another student who's going for it. He asked if I can give some tips on how to practice and or essentially look for in this part of the examination. Even though it's just a small part, if you don't know it's coming, it's interesting they don't talk about this as much. You find tons of information on other portion of theory, the tasting and service, but not many people actually talk about the wine list correction. So I'm just gonna give you some hints or tips. You only have a very short amount of time, and there are actually going to be more mistakes on that list than you can answer in amount of time you're allowed. So always look for low-hanging fruit first. Glance the list fast and multiple times. Look for things that jumps out at you that's very obviously wrong. For example, it could have a wine that is obviously red, listed under white wine under listed under red wine, and any major spelling error that you caught right off the bat. Those are easy low-hanging fruit points for you. And what else do you want to know is the error can be anything and anywhere. For example, maybe they have a wine that give you a vintage that the wine wasn't producing. Echem is not producing every given year, so maybe there's a year that it wasn't produced, or a winery started after a certain time and they give you a vintage that's prior to the winery's inception. Could be a lot of the deeper errors in there. For example, people matching the wrong region with the wrong producer, a producer that, for example, in Burgundy, let's just say if they only produce wine in Bon Romani, or they don't produce wine in Bon Romani, but there's a Bon Romani label from that winery. And of course, there's also sometimes a geographic error. For example, a wine that could be listed under the wrong region of a country, wrong part of Germany, whatever have you, a vintage error, maybe a champagne that is normally only in vintage year, but they put a non-vintage in front of you, and varietal error, of course, that can happen as well. There's no way to really quote unquote train on that besides being very familiar with it. So good luck with you, but those are some of the most common errors you'll see in a wine list correction. And at least my experience when I went was that the time went by very fast. And if you are in the industry and you know your producers, vintage, or whatever have you well, if you can prepare, you will have plenty to fill your page before the time runs out. It's not going to be like, oh my God, there's only 10 errors on the list and you must find all 10. There's multiple errors on the list and you just wanted to write down as many as you can. Now, for those of you who are not going for the exam, I still think it's very important for you to practice looking for error in wine lists to work towards your benefit. For the most part, pricing errors. That is the only thing I think the regular consumer can really benefit on. I hate to say it, and that's why they train sommelier, because they're always afraid that the sommelier can mess up on this big error, but it does happen, and it happens more often than I care to admit. So I have purchased 6 bottles of DRC before a restaurant way under the asking retail price. Forget about restaurant price, because it's usually supposed to mark up even higher. They there has to be a typo. They forgot to type a 0 or something, but if you catch it, it's yours, right? And or sometimes a vintage could change. And for example, the Somm move on to a new vintage of Burgundy, let's just say jumping from 13, let's just say to 15, but then he forgot to update the pricing, and there's a huge difference in pricing, but you can catch that. It's just absolutely beneficial to you. So it's always good as a consumer to still try to look for errors in a wine listing. And also, of course, whenever we can go back to the restaurant and drink wine again, it's also very important for you to look at the wine once it's served. Like I said, there is one vintage can mean a very huge difference in pricing. So it works both ways. You want to make sure you didn't accidentally point and pay for a more expensive vintage of a wine, and in reality they bought you the next vintage or the previous vintage that is significantly cheaper by mistake. So always good to be second looking, but either way, I hope that helped you, the gentleman who asked me the question. And of course, for most of you, I would love to invite you to come onto my website, www.angiesomm.com, and join my wine list so I can send you all the updates of my videos and a lot of really awesome wine deals whenever I get them. They go by quick, they come in. I usually only have a small allocation and they usually go out immediately. I don't keep a huge inventories, but if you're geeky and you love wine, I highly recommend you to join me. Thank you again for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye.